Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is season 6 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. Roll Up the Rim to Win is back now through March 23rd. You can play for a chance to win tens of millions of prizes. Impressive stuff, including the electric Volkswagen ID Buzz, ATVs, vacations, electronics, gift cards, Tim Hortons products, and so much more. Tim's Reward members, pay attention to this. Earn one digital roll with each eligible purchase of select drinks, breakfast, or meal items. Plus, while supplies last, guests can also receive Roll Up to Win hot beverage cups with a roll to reveal under the rim. And you know what, Ray? As Ray Ferrero joins us on this episode.
Sure.
Drive through, as I always do.
Yes.
Going to do the regional game on Tuesday, go through the Timmy's drive-through, order my coffee, a medium, 1 milk, please, thank you. It's the Roll Up the Rim cup, and guess what I won?
Something
a coffee.
Big. Oh.
No.
I thought this was a story of like a big win.
No. It's big in the sense that it's the first time that I got the Roll Up the Win Rim to Win cup, and on my first try, I win a free coffee. So there you go. I'm excited about that because as I go in today, I'm going back through and I'm getting my free coffee.
Yeah, but so because you've got a free coffee, will you buy a donut too? Will you? Will you buy a donut?
Probably.
I think you should. Why not?
Maybe
treat
a chocolate
yourself,
chunk
Grace?
cookie. Yeah, chocolate chunk cookie. That's
I'm a
normal.
cookie fan. You've heard that. I'm a cookie fan. Yeah.
So we're getting to the end of February here, my friend, and
yes,
I'm not even thinking about how this month wraps up because I'm looking at next Friday, right? And that's March 7th and the NHL trade deadline. So every day kind of rolls into one. Where are you in the calendar? I mean, you're in Anaheim today, right?
Yeah, I'm where I am with the calendars. Every 4 years there's 29 days in February. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I thought this year was one of those years. And so I got to be in Columbus Saturday for the outdoor game. And I thought there was 29 days in February. So I took these 2 Canuck games. They're like, hey, can you do these games in California? I'm like, yeah, sure. LA, I got to see Luke Robitaille and Rob Blake and Mike Altieri, some old buddies. Yeah, I got to see them. Was really cool. And did the game last night, drove over to Anaheim after the game. And I thought I had a day off after the Anaheim game, February 29th, to get to Columbus. I bet you didn't know that there's only 28 days this year in February. And so my producer at ESPN was asking, geez, why are you getting into Columbus as late as you are? Yeah. And it's because I thought I was there a day early. I honestly thought when I booked this trip, I was there a day early. Like, what a dummy.
Wow.
And so, now I get into Columbus at 5:00 and go over to the Horseshoe and see where I'm standing. There's going to be 90,000 people there and try and figure it out for the next day. But this was not as a headline for anybody here on the 27th of February. There's not 29 days in February this year.
Oh, good on you for the admission of that, because that's stuff that you could save for the Ray Ferraro book at some point, right? Do you have one? Do you have a book, by the way?
I thought I was going to do one a couple of times, and I think if you're going to do it, you got to really dive into it and some of the I don't know. I don't think I'm going to. You know what I might do? This might sound goofy, but I might work with somebody and write a book that never gets published. And it's basically a memoir for my family.
That's interesting.
That after, I'm gone or whatever, they can, things that I think about or the way that I grew up, like my grandmother, my Nona, did this. And we got a book, 13 grandkids of her life. And we learned stuff of it. It should be a movie. It's amazing. And it's one of our great keepsakes in our life. And we learned stuff about Nona's life when she was growing up or
Mm.
married in Italy before she came to Canada, like we would have never known. It would have just
No.
would have died in history. And so that's kind of been rattling around in my head. That's something I'd like to do.
That's awesome. Now, would there be a chapter in this memoir that would include Ottawa Senators head coach Travis Green, who, by the way, is joining us in this episode of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast? You have to have
Well,
a Trav story here or there.
well, it would be from the Islanders days
Yeah.
when, Greeny was a high scoring junior player, and he got to the Islanders, and Pierre Turgeon was there, and I was there, and and Al Arp, Greeny,
It's a tough lineup to crack, right?
Yeah, but he had that long hair, with it.
Oh, yeah, the flow.
And he had it like greasy and out the back of his helmet, and he thought he was really styling. But the thing was, like, he was going to be a scorer, and I think it's one of my favorite things to think about Greeny is that he got there. There was no place, so Al Arbor told him, "Yeah, fine, you've been a scorer. You need to learn to check." And like he struggled with it, but he kind of fought through being a high skilled player to still using his skill, and he had a really great shot, but creating a whole new persona as a player. And
No kidding.
I'll remember Greeny as always as a teammate, as a smartass, as a funny, way more thoughtful of what the team needed than he might have projected, because that was all part of the thing. Like, I talked a lot, but I cared. Like everybody has these little things, but man, I can't think of him and not laugh, actually. Like, except he's turned himself as well about laughing and all that. He's turned himself into one really good coach. He did a really good job in Vancouver, and he had to wait. Like, it's hard to get back in. And so now he's in Ottawa, of course, and, slugging away with a lineup that just, it's one thing to have a couple injuries, but they've lost some really, really key pieces. And they're hanging, they're right on that fringe of that East playoff race, which if they can get healthy, they're going to make a good push.
All right. Well, we'll talk to Travis about all of that coming up in the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. Let's get into the Tim Hortons headlines. And the Vancouver Canucks with a large overtime win in LA on Wednesday night. Conor Garland with a couple of goals. This one highlighted by the return rate of the captain, Quinn Hughes. And that was a curious return, wasn't it? Because, according to warmups and the fact he didn't take line rushes, et cetera, it didn't look like Quinn Hughes was going to make it into that game early on.
Well, no, it didn't. I mean, in the morning, Rick Tocchet told us he was 50-50 to play. And so I'm doing the game for Canucks for Sportsnet. And Eddie Olczyk is right beside us with John Forsland doing the TNT game. And Quinn's out there and not really a full participant in warm-up. He didn't take the line rush, as you mentioned, but he also was kind of hanging around a little bit. It wasn't a normal warm-up. So we get the lineup sheet and he's out. And so it says scratches and he's on it. So then we get a note from our producer, hey, hold on to that a minute. I think he's in. And so apparently there is a timeline to when you could make any changes to your lineup. And with about Rick Tocchet mentioned after the game, there was about 90 seconds left, and they were in this meeting, and Quinn was trying to talk his way into the lineup, but they got back-to-back games here, and the doctor was in there, the Canucks doctor is there, and they're discussing it, discussing it. Quinn's but they're running out of time, and so they decided to go with 7D, and for him, I guess it was a managed minutes. I mean, he didn't play anywhere near as much as he normally does, but I think he played just over 20 minutes. And I mean, the team looks completely different when he's in it. I mean, he's one of those, I don't know, maybe 15 or 18 players in the league that when they're in the lineup, the whole team looks different. Like, you can go through the teams and there's not many guys like that. Now, he didn't have, it's funny, he only missed 6 games, but that's a month because of the the Four Nations break. So, I mean, he was banging rust off. You could see, he fell a couple of times, which he doesn't do, lost the puck, like mishandled it, which he never does. But as the game went on, you're like, a little bit here, a little bit more comfortable there. They get into overtime and they got to kill a penalty. Now it's 4-on-3 power play. And Tyler Myers gets hurt, blocked a shot, hit him up in the throat. Fortunately, he's okay. But so Derek Forbert had to go to penalty kill. Now, as you know, it goes 4-on-4. Forbert was trying to get off the ice at the end, but he couldn't get off. Quinn was standing up over the boards by the bench for, 40 seconds. He couldn't get on the ice. And finally, Forbert looked like, his legs were dead straight when he got over there. He was exhausted. He did a hell of a job. And then Quinn jumped on and helped set up the winning goal for Conor Garland. And Vancouver needed that. They had lost. They'd lost 2 games in a row where they gave up 1 goal, or they scored 1 goal in each. And they needed that win, and Hughes became a big part of it again.
Well, let's talk about why they needed that win. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but now you've got 24, 25 games left for most clubs. So you've got Vancouver, you've got Calgary, you've got Colorado. Many are in that playoff mix. Utah, of course. Any idea, any gut feeling on how this shakes out in the end? Like, do you think it comes down to either Vancouver or Calgary, or is there enough time that the waters could get a lot muddier than that?
I do think it's Vancouver or Calgary. Utah is really interesting. And isn't it crazy what new ownership does to inject life into a franchise? They've got all these young forwards. They went and added some veteran D in the offseason. They're pretty good. Like they can be a dangerous team. And I'm just looking now, they're just 4 points back of Vancouver. They've played 1 more game. And you do run out of games in a hurry, right? Because everybody's playing each other. And but I do think it's Calgary or Vancouver. Calgary's, man, they've hung in there all year. They have, for a team that's looking at the future, really, this is a really great race for them to be in. And, I do think it's one of those 2 teams, because I think Minnesota's going to be good. They got 72 points. I think they're fine. I think Colorado's good. I think they're gonna have enough to make it. And it's still like how could anybody feel good about their position? You're like, yeah, it's fine, we're here, but holy man, a tough road trip, a bad 10 days, and that might be it for you.
LA's been a good story, but they give up a big point too in that loss. They sit 2 back of the Oilers in the Pacific Division. So as we shift over to Edmonton, I mean, the Oilers are sputtering, and that's putting it mildly. Every mistake seems to wind up in their net, and it's something that has to be immediately corrected, or it's going to become a very apparent and obvious problem in Edmonton.
Yeah, when I think of them, they're a really good team, right? But they've got some obvious places you'd like to add and improve. And they're in all 3 parts of positions. Like, there's always rumbling. Like, is the goaltending really good enough? Well, they got to Game 7 with it last year. Is it good enough?
Yeah.
Defense, you'd like a little more solid play from Bouchard. I think that's a fair way to put it. Can they find another D that they can afford to bring in? And I don't mean just money wise, but like, do you have enough to go get one?
Right.
The bottom end of their forwards at times look a little slow, and they don't add enough depth to their lineup, because they got considerably slower with the moves that they had to make, like Holloway and Fogle and McLeod. Like, those guys can skate, and you didn't replace them with burners. So, like, can you fix some of that or all of that in 8 days? I mean, it's probably a lot of moving deck chairs right now, but they look unsettled. They look unsettled right now, and it's every team goes through it. I guess you'd rather go through it now. You're gonna make the playoffs. It's not like you got to worry about that, but I guess the next part to it all is you only got 8 days to set the table for yourself. And then that's
And
what
are
you
you,
are.
you know, you're right. And are you going to know the answer to whether or not Evander Kane is coming back
Right.
prior to the start of the playoffs? And I mean, they're probably not going to have that information between now and the 7th of March. But, you know, people around the Oilers think that he will be back before the playoffs, which means they don't have that money to spend. And it's dollar in, dollar out if you're Stan Bowman.
Right. And so and then there's also the thought of, so then he hasn't played since last June.
Yeah.
It's, we already, I talked about Quinn Hughes being out a month, and, he looked rusty yesterday. But he gets that back quickly. Well, you're out 8 months.
Yeah.
And like, there's a rehab component to this. There's a conditioning component. Like, what are you going to get? Like, how would you know? Like, I guess the fact is, how would you know? How would you know what he's going to be when he can come back? And if he's healthy, it's a really good ad. And if he can play near to what he's done in the past, it's a really good ad. And if not, then you're stuck.
We'll wrap up headlines with the whole Seth Jones saga around the Chicago Blackhawks. But first, just a quick note on the Winnipeg Jets, man. To steal the line from Jack Hughes, they're on a heater. I mean, an 11-game winning streak. Conor has recorded 8 straight wins. They weren't crisp Wednesday night in Ottawa. But a mark of a good and a confident team is how you find ways to win. And that's exactly what Winnipeg has done, both in a very dominant way certain nights, but then like last night in Ottawa, they just get the job done. This is a really, really good team.
They are, I mean, it's funny watching them in Washington kind of trade places, as they fight for the top spot in the league. And I would say that Washington and Winnipeg, they're the same in just what you said. Like, some nights, like I've seen Washington quite a bit, and they just don't have it. Like, it's not a sharp, crisp night, as you called it, and they win. They kind of scratch and claw, and because they're good, because the Jets are good, they can slog through it. And Travis Green is gonna, we've taped the interview, and he talks about how you can play really well and not win in games in this league. But Winnipeg's good enough. They're at that end of the league where if you don't have your A game, your B game lots of nights is good enough. And man, they're just strong. They're like a physically strong, relentless team. And they'll be a tough team, aside to wherever they finish, first or second in the league. They'll be a tough team to beat 4 out of 7 games.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, they've been set up. They've been set up, and they've had heartbreak, but their team is set up to be a playoff style team. And remember, Scott O'Neill said at the beginning when he told us, he's like, the guys were embarrassed last year, and so they don't have to dig.
Yeah,
right. They don't have to dig for motivation. It's right there. It's not made up. It's right there. I think that's a really important thing they have going.
So let's wrap up the Tim Hortons headlines with Seth Jones. And then we know that he wants to get to a winning team. We know that he's got the no trade protection. We know the Chicago Blackhawks sit 31st in the National Hockey League. We're also learning that Seth Jones is becoming more and more vocal. So earlier this week, here's what he had to say. And I want your response after we hear the comment from Jones.
We're the exact same team right now as we were at game 1. And I think it's pretty evident out there. We haven't made any strides to be a better, more simple hockey team, And it shows, we don't get a lot of wins because of that.
This is kind of an opportunity to gauge that since you started here and now 60 games and almost you're back here again.
Well, this has been almost 4 years of, bottom of the league, so it's not just this year.
Okay. What's your response? Is he talking about the coach? Is he talking about his teammates, himself, management? Like, what's your takeaway to that?
Well, my first thought is when he says it's been 4 years of this, which he's been there 4 years, it wasn't a surprise where their team was positionally 4 years ago, right? Like you could see, I mean, it's pretty easy to see where they were. So you've got a team that's sliding off the top end of the league right towards the mushy middle, towards the bottom third. Like you could see it happening. And then on the other hand, there's $72 million. So like you go, like everybody makes that decision on their own. Like he did he have other offers? Was it only Chicago? Was it only the dollar figure that enticed him? And you know what? He's not wrong. If he wants to go where $72 million is, I sure as hell would have. I would have for sure. And then you hope that it's going to get better. Well, while you're there, you're in the middle of a rebuild, and the rebuild's not going to be quick. So again, I get that he wants out. Well, you've got full no trade protection, and it's so now you have to understand, if you want to leave, you can't invoke your no trade protection and say, oh, I'll only go to 1 or 2 or 3 teams and expect the deal to get done on your timeline. There is no timeline for this. If Kyle Davidson cannot get a deal done by next Friday, I think he's crazy just to say, oh, I got to get Jones out of here and I'll take not much. I'd wait till June. Too bad.
Yeah.
Like if you want to go, give 10 teams, give 8 teams, you've got to give some options to your manager to move you, because you make $72 million. Well, you make, $9 million a year. So it's not as straightforward as the player ever thinks. He wants to leave? Good. Give some options. If you don't give options, there's a good chance you're gonna be muddling around here until they can get to the offseason and try and figure something out around the draft.
All right. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons. All right, we're joined on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast now by Ottawa Senators head coach Travis Green. And you know what? Why don't we just start with the fun stuff? Because the world that you're in right now, Travis, with all the injuries, isn't a whole lot of fun for you or the Ottawa Senators. But when you see Ray Ferraro's face,
beat it,
former teammate and good friend, I mean, obviously it puts a smile on your face.
Yeah, it definitely is a way to brighten my day, that's for sure. People ask me how you're doing. I was expecting it today for you guys to ask me how we're doing. If you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago, it'd probably be a little bit different. But the best way I can explain it is if I'd beaten Ray Ferraro on a golf course 5 holes in a row, how would he feel? I think everyone that knows Ray knows how he'd feel and how grumpy he was. So that's about how I'm feeling right now.
Okay, I'm going to say 2 things. One, I do scuffle around on the course when I'm losing. I do drag my feet. The other thing is, unfortunately, in the West Kootenays, where Travis and I are from, he's from Castlegar, which is like way out, and I'm from Trail, which is the epicenter of the Kootenays. And there's not a lot of patience that gets spread around there. So watching him sign into this thing was fabulous, because Greenie, I do it twice a week, and when I screw up, I've lost it. You're like, when you spun out of your chair to go get Ian Mendes, this may be my favorite part of the morning so far. I love that. So how are you doing, man? Like you guys are just decimated with injuries.
Yeah.
And it's not just been for a week either, right? Like it's been a while.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been good, but it's I guess back it up. And how am I doing? I'm doing great. I really like our team right now. I like the way we're playing before we have these injuries, and I like how our group's battling right now. We're in a battle. We went through a little bit of a stretch in November, and that was a different type of battle. I felt like our team really matured in that group in that time, and now we're in a different type of battle where we've got to scratch claw, and it's not easy to find wins at this time of the year when you've got some of your top guys out. But I like the step we took last night for sure. I liked a lot of our game. And unfortunately, you can play well or like your game in the NHL and not win. And now the challenge is to not look behind us at what's happened in the last few weeks. look ahead, look at today. How do we win the day? And that's been really something that we've tried to instill into our group from day one.
How do you like? So for a lot of these players, they've not been in a playoff series, and of course,
Yeah.
Ottawa's a pretty focused market on your team, and that's all you keep reading about playoffs. How do you get these guys to go like, nah, don't look at that yet? Because of course everybody does, right? I'm sure
Yes.
everybody looks at the standings every day, right?
Yeah. No, and I think, Ray, like, you guys know, teams go through different scenarios all the time, and you learn from them. And I really felt like, when I took over the job, there was going to be different obstacles as far as how we want to play, the style of hockey we need to play to make the playoffs. But also there's going to be some points where mentally we're going to have to be stronger and grow as a group, this team. And that stretch that I'm talking about was in November, where we were losing some games that I felt personally that we could have won, but as a group there was almost this here we go again kind of feeling. And we want to make the playoff, and they really do. This group is fantastic to coach. They're coachable, they want to win badly. And that stretch was really, really good for our group, because we got down to the kind of the meat of it a little bit, and I could be honest with our group about living in the past is going to kill you. You're never gonna move forward if you're living in the past, and looking at what's in front of you is the most important thing. And I felt our group really grew from that spot, and that's going to help them right now. So I think our group's really excited. They know how good they can play when we're healthy, and they're excited for this next stretch for sure. And I got a lot of belief in our group too.
Yeah, and Travis, speaking of the group, I mean, so the NHL trade deadline is just over a week away now. There wouldn't be a coach in the league that doesn't look at it and go, geez, I'd like this. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. But as you get specific to the group here and the tough times that you've had to go through as a group, it's also important, isn't it, to allow this young core to go through the experience of how difficult it is to lock down that playoff spot and then get in the playoffs and the challenges that go into a 7-game series. So there's value in that, as opposed to trying to airlift somebody in that makes you that much better.
Yeah, I think the one thing we've seen over the years is, hey, there's no guarantees. You can make trades and add players, and I working with Steve now, I really like the way he functions, the way he works, the way he looks at things, and his relationship with Coach GM, and I think he understands that as well, and he has a lot of faith in our group right now. Is there things that I think he'd like to do to help our group for sure, but I also know that he believes in our group as well, and I think at the beginning of the year, if we would have said, hey, we're 25 games left, we were in a playoff spot, we'd be pretty happy with this group, and especially the way we've played probably since December, end of November. I think everyone on our team and in our group has faith in where we're going and how we're going to get there, and it's going to be an exciting stretch. And you got to go through these moments as you become a better team as well to ultimately, like, we're not in it just to make the playoffs. That's I'm sitting here. I have confidence we can if we get everyone back and we play the right way. But we want to win a Stanley Cup, and you got to go through a lot of different scenarios, different learning experiences to win a Stanley Cup.
Do you sense any the extra chatter from around the guys about the deadline? Again, they're such a young team. I mean, we went through it, and we were always hot stoving on the back of the bus and putting things we'd heard together. Like, do you sense any of that? And can you address that?
Yeah, I to be honest, I haven't. It's one of the rare times that I haven't. And maybe that's because of the Four Nations. and it
Right.
being so close to the trade deadline, I expect around the league within the locker rooms it'll probably heat up a little bit more now that we're getting closer to it. Probably the fact that we have some injuries too. There's been probably a lot more chatter about that around our room, like who's playing, who's not from day to day, than anything else.
Yeah, I just remember like sitting around and somebody would hear something and
Oh,
then
yeah.
pretty soon it's like a whole story, and then of course the stuff
Like you'd
that
crack
you hear,
open the old hockey news, Ray? Is that what you'd do?
Yeah,
Back then you
or
didn't have social media.
no, somebody had
We
talked
didn't
to
have cell
somebody.
phones.
Yeah, somebody had talked to, so we actually had to talk to each other. And so
Yeah,
like
fair.
somebody would hear from a buddy on another team, and then
Right.
pretty soon it's like this whole story. It never happened, right? Like
No.
until you get called
Yeah.
and told, oh yeah.
And you can imagine if with Ray on your team, there'd probably be a little more chatter about certain things happening, and you could just.
Are you kidding me? Hey,
Hey,
Greeny
I
was.
heard that.
This is
Oh no,
awesome.
Greeny was always connected. He always knew that. He always had something. He always he was.
But I know
if
I could say it to Ray, then the team would know in about 30 seconds.
That's so bullshit. That's so wrong.
Greer, I
so
should know
wrong.
this. Were you ever traded at the deadline? A couple of times?
Geez. I was lucky enough to have a team that wanted me, never mind at the deadline.
After a while, you're like, when you get older, right? You get traded, you're like, pack up and move this. At least I get to go keep playing, right? It's not like when you're young.
Exactly.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
Hey, Greeny, you were away for a bit. You lived out in California. You're a watcher. You like the detail of the game. In the time you were gone to the time you're back, the season is just, it seems like it gets more compacted every year. Did you learn, or what did you learn about trying to make it all fit? Because every coach I talk to is like, yeah, we can't practice. There's no practice time. There's like, how do you make the most of the little bit that you get?
Well, this season's been, the Four Nations, it's, the season has been condensed for sure. And then we also had the World Juniors here too. So that, I think we played 14 or 15 out of 19 on the road at one point. So, it is a challenge. You don't get to practice a lot. And when I went to Vancouver, we used the catapult system. And, with technology now today, the way you can monitor your players, where they're at, your strength team, I put a lot of stock in that and work with them closely as far as how hard we're working our group, how hard we need to work our group. And I've really found that to be, not only when I went to Vancouver, fascinating, but very helpful in making decisions as far as what we need to do to make sure our team is running at full capacity come game time and having enough energy to play and to skate at the pace of the league right now. Because it's amazing how fast the game is right now. And if you're off, if you don't have your legs, it's a tough game to play.
So just for people listening, like Catapult basically monitors work rate and
the workload. Yeah.
Workload, for each player, right?
Yeah, each player and as a group. I look at more the group number, and they obviously look at individuals to see who's maybe redlining or overdoing it, and I use it a lot. Like I use it every day in practice and go with our strength team what kind of number we're looking to get to today, because you can push a team too hard, and you can also maybe go too light on a group and when they need a push, and I value using that system a lot with our strength group.
Man, there's so much that's changed, isn't there? Could you imagine us with it? Like,
yeah,
we just didn't know.
I know.
We
people laugh that I'm using it. I was a skinny fat guy that is making sure that his guys are elite.
There is something. Greeny, I'm going to say it anyway, so I hope you don't mind. But like, Greeny was able to get through NHL practices with very little sweat. on his shirt. It was, and no, but honestly, he'd do his thing. He just like, there'd be like a spot under his shoulder pad. Nobody sweated less than Luke Robitaille. One drop right between his shoulder pads. Greeny you could get yourself around. Hey, you were your own catapult system.
You know what, Dregs? When you're an elite conditioned athlete, the norm, a normal practice for some guys, it was like a walk in the park for me. I was like, when are we going to start skating hard?
It's so good.
I remember going up and running laps at the Warfield pool on doing 400s, and you do enough of those, practices aren't hard.
Drakes, you don't know the Warfield pool, one of the most scenic pools in the West Kootenays.
Only place that had a running track.
Travis, you've referred to the Four Nations a couple of times, right? So what was your takeaway from that? I mean, aside from Brady, obviously getting dinged up there, that was the fear of every coach, every general manager. But for you, what was your takeaway in watching that game, and maybe the value of the experience that Tkachuk and Linus Ullmark had coming out of it?
Yeah, you know what? I think it was phenomenal for the hockey world. Man, what a 10-day span that was to watch hockey. And I think it's easy for me to sit here and say, hey, you know what? It sucks. It wasn't good. We got our captains hurt. And, that's just part of it. I think it was so good for the NHL, so good for hockey fans around the world, and good for players that go, especially younger guys. My God. Sanderson steps in, plays 2 games, plays phenomenal.
Exactly.
Brady, for me, it was not surprising that Brady did well and played the way he does. I get to see him every day and talk to him every day and understand the type of individual he is and the type of competitor he is. Obviously, with Linus, he didn't get to play as much, but it was still valuable time going there for sure. And, take away the experience that your younger players get. Just the experience that the whole hockey world got to witness was phenomenal. Just being a hockey fan, it was awesome to watch. Really was.
You brought up Sanderson really quickly. I hadn't seen him live, but the game in Vancouver, where he had a tremendous night. But my God, can he cover the ice? Like it is, and to watch him at that level, like were you not surprised, but were you like, oh man, like that's a step for him, and he just chewed it up. He was terrific when he came in.
Be honest, Ray, I wasn't surprised. He's just a really good hockey player, boy. He every once in a while, I find as a coach, it doesn't happen very often, but you come across a player that I think inside your head you kind of say, hey, I got to make sure I don't screw this guy up and overcoach him. And he's one of them. Like, he gets it. You show video, team video, individual video. He understands it right away. He tries to perfect it. He tries to do what you're trying to teach. Physically, he's beyond years. Mentally as well, and I just think his game it's just improving almost, weekly. Yeah, he's not very old. I think Sandy's only 22 years old, and he plays with some nights you'd think he looks like a 30-year-old veteran that's, won cups and he's got that composure in his game, and he's a joy to coach. He's a really good hockey player, boy.
Well, and you've got a number of them with the Ottawa Senators, and it looks like a very good future ahead. It's a tough and busy time of year. So, Travis, we appreciate you taking the time, and all the best in this final push to the playoffs.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Always fun to come on with you guys.
Yeah, get healthy, Greeny. Good luck, eh?
Thanks, boys. Talk to you later.
All right. Your old pal, Travis Green, joining us on the Rain Dregs podcast there, Ray. And, you do feel like this team is in good hands, right? They've got the right coach, the right coaching staff. Steve Staios, Dave Poulin, hockey operations seems to be in good hands. You've got a very resourceful and supportive owner in Michael Andlauer. And I mean, what's your assessment of where Ottawa is and where they might be. I thought it was interesting that he said, look, this isn't about making the playoffs. This is about getting to a place in the very near future where we're winning Stanley Cups. We're contending for a Stanley Cup. I mean, that's the sense of belief that Travis Green has as head coach.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to Dean Evison yesterday. I'm going in to do the Columbus Detroit outdoor game, and talked about what they're thinking in Columbus. And Dean made a point of the playoffs are just step one. It's like step two is, playoffs, but then can we win a round? And if we can win a round, how do we get to the next step, which is to win and play deeper? It's like everything is these climbing up these stairs that get steeper and steeper as you get towards the playoffs. So what I think about Ottawa is go back a year when they were finally finishing the ownership thing. It was finally going to get done, and they were going to move on, and Michael Landauer was going to take over. They basically had to rebuild their hockey department because they had more resources. But to rebuild it, that's got nothing to do with playing, except it kind of does, right? It kind of does. And so they're in a position now at 62 points that isn't really at all similar to where they started, because the way they scout, the way they develop, the way that they coach, it's all changing in the course of a few months. And so they're right where they should be. Yet if they can get healthy, can they be in that group with Columbus and Detroit? The answer is yes. To fight for that. Oh yeah, the Rangers are still there too, and Boston's kind of clunking around there too. And it's like you're fighting for a couple of spots, and the margin for a team like Ottawa that's never been in, and Detroit and Columbus, the margin's really fine, and it feels. I remember it feels heavy because every point is so critical. It's so valuable, and not that the older teams or more experienced teams don't feel that, but they've dealt with it before. And so Greeny's got to, you keep it fresh, you keep it encouraging, but you push. And as he talked about, like, you've got to find the right push and the right layback. And, it's all new for a lot of those players.
Well, thank you to Travis. Thank you to the Ottawa Senators for joining us today on the Rain Dregs podcast. And as we started the pod, why don't we wrap it up? Are you okay with your schedule and the fact that there isn't 29 days? Like, if you got this, because there's been a level of calmness in just your demeanor today. I'm impressed by it. I thought normally the old Ray would be rattled to lose a day, but no.
I've already screwed up. There's no way. I can't fix that back. Hey, Greeny was talking about look forward, don't look back. One of these years, there's going to be 29 days, and I'm going to be on it. I'm going to be on it. So as it sits now, I got the game here. I know I got a flight at 7:00 tomorrow. I got the game in Columbus on Saturday, and so I can get myself to there, and then Then I'll get organized now. And then I can look into next week.
Well, next week is a busy one, right? Trade deadline week, Ray. You'll be dialed
busy for
in.
you.
You'll be making calls.
No, I'll just be listening to you, and I'll be evaluating your stuff. So get on it, mister. Get on it.
All right, buddy. Thanks as always.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend.
You bet. Thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make this pod possible. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons, and thank you to Acon. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. The hockey that goes along with all of the speculation trade related. Until next time, stay safe.